Constructed as two separate landfills in 1974 by Clean Communities, the Plainville landfill is the largest in Massachusetts. Acquired by Laidlaw in 1980, it is the first of its kind constructed with a full liner system, leachate collection, and groundwater monitoring system. Tom McShane, environmental consultant for Laidlaw, tells us about the environmental safeguards used on the site.
I think that predominantly there are 4 areas of environmental safeguards that you're looking for from a landfill. The first and most important one is groundwater protection. As I mentioned earlier, the Plainville landfill was the first landfill in Massachusetts to ever have a complete liner system. In the old days, what people used to do with their rubbish was they would go and find wetlands because they thought wetlands was not very valuable land and a wasted area, and they would dig out a hole in the wetlands, and that's where they would put the landfills. And in most communities, those wetland areas would be right along the town boundaries. That's probably the worst place in the world to build landfills because of the ecosystems that flow through the wetland areas. In 1974, when Clean Communities started this landfill, the gentleman who started it was way ahead of his time. He was fully 12 years ahead of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and 20 years ahead of the federal government in terms of designing the landfill from the very beginning with a full synthetic liner system. Not a full synthetic liner system, with a full liner system. The original liner was 2 feet of clay so that nothing could get through the bottom of the landfill into the groundwater. In more recent years, since Laidlaw has taken over, they not only have the 2 feet of clay, they also have a drainage layer, a layer that has a stormwater collection system and leachate collection system, and then they have a synthetic liner system as well. And so the liner system is actually a compendium of several feet thick of different types of materials, all designed for the purpose of 2 things. Number 1, to make sure no leachate or groundwater gets through the liner into the groundwater, and number 2, that any water that does come through the landfill gets carried off as leachate. The second area that you're concerned with beyond groundwater protection is the stormwater runoff system. That's why landfills are built like a cone shape. The importance of the expansions in terms of rounding off the shape of the landfill is so that the water can most freely flow down the sides of the landfill and be detained in stormwater detention areas. And then you can make sure that nothing is running off into the streams or water bodies nearby. The third area is what you would consider in terms of odor control. Any landfill decomposition of trash always carries odors with it, and that's probably the biggest nightmare for a landfill operator, is how to control odors. The state of the art with odor control up until fairly recently was to basically put in an upside down J-bar where you just vented the gas out of the top of the landfill. Here at the Plainville landfill, we've experimented and now have fully installed an active gas collection system that you basically drill wells over the face of the landfill, have those wells attached to a vacuum, you suck the gas literally out of the hill so that you can't have odors escaping, and you bring it to a flare system and have it burnt off. And that way you've totally destroyed the gases and hopefully destroy any opportunity for creation of odor. And then the last thing, which is a state-of-the-art system here beyond the groundwater, the stormwater, and the landfill gas issue, is what you do with the landfill gas in the next generation. And we're pleased that we've been permitted now as the second landfill in Massachusetts to take the landfill gas, and instead of just burning it off and destroying the odors, good in and of itself, to actually use that gas as an energy source and to create electricity from it. So although we haven't built the generating capacity equipment yet, our plan is to begin to use that gas as an energy source and to create electricity, a renewable source of energy.
Joe Donzi, Division General Manager at the landfill, says these safeguards make the difference between this facility and an ordinary town dump.
Basically, I think the most important thing for folks to know about this facility is that it's first and foremost necessary. That landfills in general are a necessary part of our society today, and that if that's the case, better to have a facility similar to this one than to have the old town dump where there are no engineering controls or environmental monitoring that goes on at the facility. So the thing that we're most proud of at this facility is that we are the first and as far as we're aware, the only fully lined facility in this state. We certainly have one of the most extensive groundwater monitoring systems around this facility. We have the most extensive gas collection systems here at Laidlaw, and we have a commitment to the communities that surround us. We have an unparalleled relationship with the town of Plainville, and it's just an example of how you could take a facility like a landfill and turn it into a general public good.
Although the state of Massachusetts is closing many town landfills, Joe Donzi believes that because of recycling and energy conversion, the Plainville landfill will continue its operation.
We pride ourselves on staying on top of technology, and it's really not something that people need to be afraid of. Those sites are being closed one by one by the state as part of their master plan, and those kinds of sites where they don't have liners or they don't have all the engineering controls that we have at this facility are one by one being erased from the board, and what we're going to be left with is a state-of-the-art facility such as Laidlaw's, and they don't have to be a bad thing. I mean, the fact is that we all create the waste, and without facilities like this one, it'll have no place to go, and we'll be moving backwards.
Tom McShane also talks about how the landfill is a leader in utilizing environmental technology and its future in the state of Massachusetts.
I don't think you're going to find a landfill in Massachusetts that has a better track record in terms of both compliance with environmental regulations, but more importantly, coming up with the new technologies that have led the way for the state to require at other landfills. The problem that we face with the state is not one of environmental protection systems. The problem that we have with the state right now is whether or not the state as a policy matter is going to continue to allow any new additional landfills in the Commonwealth. Massachusetts has a policy that's embodied in the state solid waste master plan that is issued by the State Department of Environmental Protection on an annual basis, and the current state policy is to favor incineration over landfilling. As a result, they encourage that 50% of the trash be incinerated, 46% be recycled, and only 4% of the trash be landfilled. Laidlaw supports this policy. We think that Massachusetts should increase the amount of recycling, and we think that we should use our landfill capacity only for those things that cannot be source reduced or recycled. We have a strong recycling program in the middle of constructing a recycling transfer station for the communities in southeastern Massachusetts here, and we have a strong partnership with the Prinz recycling plant in Charlestown to keep recycling growing here in Massachusetts. In terms of incineration, I think that incineration, although it has its good points and its detriments, in terms of its good points, it does reduce the amount of material that has to be landfilled, and I think that source reduction is important. In terms of its detriments, I think that there's a lot of questions still having to do with air emissions that people are concerned with having to do with the combustion process. In any case, there's material that's left at the end of an incineration process. The ash that's left from that, which can be burnt, and there's residual materials called bypass waste, which can't be burnt. things that are made out of metal, things that have too wet a content, too heavy a liquid content, that cannot be burnt in incinerators, and those things are still going to need landfilling. So that in terms of the Plainville landfill in the state, we enjoy and have enjoyed a 20-year history of good relationship and a productive give and take in terms of us experimenting with new technologies. Last year we were experimenting with Posi shell, which was an alternative cover material the state was interested in. This year we're experimenting with the new forms of composting on the top of the pile because of the amount of composting going on in Massachusetts cities and towns right now. So it's been a good, productive relationship with the state. I think the question at this point is how much landfill capacity does Massachusetts need, and where does the Plainville facility fit into that master plan?
For creating a healthy environment from the Plainville landfill in Plainville, Massachusetts, this is Steve Janzura.